2014, Al-Qaeda disavowed all ties to the radical terrorist group ISIS, the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, because of its excessive brutality and corruption of Islam. Surprisingly, Al-Qaeda, notorious for the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, claimed this organization to be exponentially more dangerous and inhumane. If this is true, one can only imagine the crimes against humanity taking place in ISIS's sphere of influence, reaching from Syria to Western Iraq. The Islamic State fights for a larger Sunni Muslim empire expanding across the globe, and to do so, they plan to murder every innocent non-Sunni man, woman, and child. The world clearly underestimates the threat this organization poses. Many politicians and analysts believe intervention is counterproductive. Because ISIS threatens only the local population, the Middle East can handle its own problems, and America has already invested too much into international conflicts. However, the United States must invest further into countering ISIS, because preemptive action can save millions of lives from future acts of terror. The world will certainly benefit from more stabilized regions, and the Islamic State commits global atrocities. All societies, no matter how large or small, are morally obligated to crush these acts because the world cannot afford another Holocaust. The United States can save millions of future lives by taking early action against terrorist organizations. America should learn from the lessons of the Second World War. Because of its isolationist policies when dealing with Europe, it allowed Germany to successfully devour Europe, enslave its citizens, and annihilate 6 million Jews. ISIS plans on doing much more. In a January 2015 New York Times interview, German author Jürgen Todenhofer describes entering into the heart of ISIS and interviewing its spokesman. I asked the fighter about the treatment of other religions. 150 million, 200 million, 500 million. It does not matter to us, the fighter answered. We will kill them all. The leaders of ISIS plan to annihilate all supposed infidels. So before they can even attempt such a global religious cleansing, the United States must take action. If the US had taken greater strides to dismantle the Islamic State, many potential terrorists would not have looked to the organization for inspiration. On January 7th, 2015, 2 Algerian men claiming ties to ISIS entered the office of the satirical French magazine Charlie Hebdo and opened fire. 12 people died because this organization had inspired its followers to murder in response to an offensive cartoon, reported in a January 2015 BBC article, Charlie Hebdo Attack, 3 Days of Terror. Jürgen recalls an ISIS spokesperson being clearly unapologetic about this group's transgressions and vowing that there was more to come. ISIS has the determination to make these threats come true, but the US also has the economic and military power to stop ISIS before it becomes an even greater danger. Many opponents to countering the Islamic State also believe the cost is prohibitive, but helping to stabilize the entire Mideast creates economic benefits far outweighing the costs. Creating trade relationships will grow the global economy, offer hundreds of thousands of jobs, induce governmental reformation, and increase nonviolent interactions between many countries. Trade acts as a catalyst to spur growth and development in all nations, theoretically building diplomatic, military, and economic stabilization at a global perspective. Countries that buy constantly from each other are less inclined to declare war. David Lipton describes the benefits of expanding economic cooperation in the Mideast in the November 2012 International Monetary Fund article, Enabling Economic Transformation in the Middle East and North Africa. After the fall of communism, the prospect of European Union membership held out a powerful promise that served as a political and economic anchor and helped orient the transition to an updated government. The Middle East has the same potential to build a more economic, focused system. As a result of dismantling ISIS and encouraging trade growth in this region, the world would gain many economic benefits. Also, developing a regional and global trade center like the European Union could give incentives for better political unions in countries like Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, and Iran to form. The United States should take greater initiative to combat ISIS for much more than economic benefit, because this organization commits innumerable atrocities and corrupts all that Islam represents. These groups, in many ways, represent a wholly new sect that has arisen out of Islam, states historian Reza Aslan in the NPR article, The War on the Word Jihad, one in which all the diversity of Islamic thought has been diluted into this one single notion: jihad and nothing else. ISIS has distorted its religion, for it publicly executes journalists and advocates for freedom of speech, massacres prisoners of war, enslaves women, teaches jihadism to children, and eradicates all free thinking within its borders. When Todenhofer mentioned ISIS atrocities during his interview with a spokesperson in the 2015 New York Times article, Author's Journey Inside ISIS. They're more dangerous than people believe. The fighter responded, I would say that slavery is a great help to us, and we will continue to have slavery and beheadings. It is part of our religion. This group publicly admits to the existence of its crimes and glorifies its barbarism. These terrorists continually promote violence and display it with pride, so we must bond together to denounce, dismantle the organization, and destroy the hate it spawns. The United States must take greater action to completely dismantle ISIS economically, socially, militarily, and philosophically, to prevent millions of deaths, grow the global economy, and destroy a source of inspiration for thousands of young terrorists. We must use all resources available. In the push for freedom in the Mideast, crushing ISIS militarily is only the first step. Dozens of groups in that region finance this organization. To cure this cancer, the United States must levy harsh economic penalties against any and all sources of support. Faced with a chaotic situation in which unified governments do not exist in the Middle East, nations must pool all available resources to promote a more stabilized region. We must provide incentives to build a unified front with the help of Middle Eastern nations against ISIS, but only with the combined intervention of military airstrikes and training, economic incentives, and humanitarian aid can we eradicate such a massive threat. Thank you.